A laminated ID card hitting a countertop shouldn't sound like a gunshot, but inside Gate B14 at JFK, it certainly felt like one. 1 minute, gate agent Patricia Gable was screaming about airline policy, smirking as she tore up a boarding pass in front of a weeping woman. The next, she was hyperventilating, her face draining of color as she stared at the credentials in front of her. "Doctor?" Beatrice Holloway didn't raise her voice once. She didn't have to. Sometimes, the quietest person in the room is the one who owns the building. And Patricia was about to learn that the hard way. The fluorescent lights of John F. Kennedy International Airport hummed with that specific, headache-inducing frequency that only weary travelers seem to notice. It was 6:45 p.m. on a Tuesday, the precipice of the evening rush, and Terminal 4 felt less like a transportation hub and more like a holding pen for the damned. "Doctor." Beatrice Holloway adjusted the strap of her leather tote bag on her shoulder. At 54, Beatrice moved with an elegance that defied the chaos around her. She was dressed in a charcoal wool coat that looked simple to the untrained eye, but whispered bespoke to anyone who knew fabrics. Her hair was pulled back in a neat, silver-streaked bun, and her glasses sat perched on a nose that had seen more late nights and legal briefs than most people saw in a lifetime. She wasn't just tired, she was exhausted. The medical conference in Geneva had been a marathon of lectures, donor dinners, and high-stakes negotiations regarding pediatric oncology funding. All she wanted was to board Vista Airways Flight 294 to Chicago, drink a glass of sparkling water, and sleep until the wheels touched the tarmac. She checked her phone. Boarding in 10 minutes? She was flying first class not because she flaunted her wealth, but because she needed the workspace. She held her phone with the digital boarding pass ready, standing near the priority lane, patiently waiting for the gate agent to pick up the microphone. The gate agent in question was a woman named Patricia Patty Gable. Patty was a fixture at Gate B14, and not a pleasant one. She was a woman in her late 40s who wore her polyester uniform like a suit of armor. Her blonde hair was teased into a rigid helmet of hairspray, and her name tag hung slightly askew, weighed down by various service excellence pins that seemed ironic given the scowl currently etched onto her face. Beatrice watched as Patty berated a young couple with a toddler. "I don't care what the email said, sir." Patty's voice was shrill, cutting through the ambient noise of the terminal. "The stroller needs a yellow tag. If you don't have a yellow tag, it doesn't go on the plane. You need to go back to the check-in counter." "But the check-in counter is outside security," the young father pleaded, sweat beading on his forehead. "Our flight leaves in 20 minutes. Can't you just print a tag here?" "I don't have tags here," Patty lied. Beatrice could see a roll of yellow tags sitting clearly on the shelf behind her. "Policy is policy. Step aside. You're blocking the flow." Beatrice frowned. It was a small cruelty, unnecessary and petty. She watched the couple drag their luggage and crying child away, looking defeated. Patty smoothed her skirt, looked up, and locked eyes with Beatrice. For a second, there was a flicker of something in Patty's eyes assessment. She scanned Beatrice from head to toe. She saw a black woman standing alone, dressed modestly, looking at her phone. She didn't see the bespoke coat. She didn't see the weary dignity. She saw a target. "We aren't boarding yet," Patty barked, not using the microphone, just shouting across the velvet rope. "Zone 1 is for first class and Diamond Medallion members only. You need to wait for Zone 4. Beatrice blinked, taken aback by the sudden aggression. She stepped forward calmly. "I am aware. I'm in first class, seat 2A. Patty let out a short, derisive huff. It was a sound that said, "Yeah, right. If you're in first class, you need to stand in the proper lane," Patty said, pointing to the red carpet 2 inches to Beatrice's left. Beatrice was effectively standing on the line. "I am in the lane," Beatrice said softly. "You're crowding the podium." "Step back," Patty snapped, turning her back to type furiously on her computer. Beatrice took a deep breath. "Pick your battles, B," she told herself. "You're home in 3 hours." She took a half step back. Beside her, a tall man in a navy suit walked up. He was white, holding a briefcase, looking impatient. He stepped right past Beatrice, actually crossing the invisible barrier Patty had just yelled about, and leaned over the counter. "Hey, any chance of an upgrade?" "I'm gold status," the man asked, flashing a smile. Patty's demeanor transformed instantly. The scowl melted into a sycophantic grin. "Well, hello, mister." She glanced at his pass. Mr. Henderson, let me check for you. We love our gold members. She didn't tell him to step back. She didn't tell him he was crowding the podium. Beatrice felt the familiar prickle of heat on the back of her neck. It wasn't the first time she'd been invisible, or treated like a nuisance while someone else was treated like a VIP. Usually, she let it slide. But today, her feet hurt, and she just wanted to go home. Excuse me, Beatrice said, her voice firm. I believe boarding was supposed to start 5 minutes ago? Patty held up a finger to Beatrice, without looking at her, continuing to flirt with Mr. Henderson. Just a moment, sweetie. I'm helping a priority customer. Sweetie. Beatrice tightened her grip on her phone. I am also a priority customer. Patty finally turned back to her, the smile dropping like a stone. Ma'am, if you continue to harass the staff, I will have you removed from the boarding area. Wait your turn. Mr. Henderson glanced at Beatrice, looking slightly uncomfortable, then back at Patty. It's fine, really. I can just board. No, Arthur, it's the principal, Patty said loudly, performing for an audience now. Some people think the rules don't apply to them. Beatrice stood perfectly still. The air around her seemed to cool. I agree, she said. Some people certainly do think that. Patty narrowed her eyes. The gauntlet had been thrown. 10 minutes later, boarding finally began. Now inviting our first-class passengers and active military, Patty announced over the PA system. Mr. Henderson scanned his pass and walked through. Have a great flight, Arthur, Patty chirped. Beatrice stepped up next. She held her phone out to the scanner. Patty put her hand over the scanner. Passport and ID, Patty demanded. Beatrice paused. It was a domestic flight. I have my driver's license. She pulled it out. Patty scrutinized the license as if it were a forgery of the Declaration of Independence. She held it up to the light. She bent it slightly. She looked at the photo, then at Beatrice, then back at the photo. You look different in the picture, Patty muttered. It was taken 3 years ago. I've changed my hair, Beatrice said, her patience thinning. Is there a problem? Patty didn't answer. She handed the ID back with a sneer. Scan. Beatrice scanned her phone. The machine beeped green. 2A, first class. She moved to walk toward the jet bridge. Whoa, 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 Patty shouted, stepping out from behind the podium and physically blocking Beatrice's path with her body. Beatrice stopped abruptly to avoid colliding with her. What now? That bag, Patty pointed a manicured finger at Beatrice's leather tote. And that rollerboard. You have too many items. I have one carry-on and one personal item, Beatrice said calmly. That is the allowance for all passengers, especially first class. That roller is too big, Patty declared. It won't fit in the overhead. You have to gate check it. Beatrice looked down at her suitcase. It was a standard Tumi International carry-on. It was designed specifically to fit in every major airline's overhead bin. She had flown with this exact bag over 200 times. It fits, Beatrice said. It fits in the sizer. I've flown Vista Airways 4 times this month with this bag. Policies have changed, Patty lied. The new bins on the 737 MAX are smaller. You have to check it. $75 fee. I am in first class. Checked bags are free. Even if I were to check it, which I am not, Beatrice countered. The bins in first class are full, Patty shot back. How can they be full? Beatrice asked, her voice raising a fraction of an octave. I am the second person to board. Mr. Henderson is the only person on the plane. The logic hung in the air, undeniable. Passengers in the line behind Beatrice began to murmur. A young man with a backpack, Leo, leaned forward. Hey, let her on. Her bag is the same size as mine. Mind your business, sir, Patty snapped at Leo. She turned back to Beatrice, her face flushing red. She was losing control of the narrative, and she hated it. She needed to assert dominance. It's not about the bins anymore, Patty said, shifting the goalposts. It's about the sizer. If it doesn't fit in the metal sizer, it doesn't fly. Prove it fits. She pointed to the metal cage near the gate door. It was the bag of shame test. Beatrice knew her bag would fit. She walked over to the metal sizer. With a smooth motion, she slid the suitcase in. It slid in perfectly. Wheels and all. There was even a half-inch of wiggle room. Beatrice looked up at Patty. Satisfied? Patty walked over, squatting down. She poked the handle. It was flush. She poked the wheels. They were inside the bars. The line of passengers watched. Mr. Henderson, who had paused in the jet bridge to watch the commotion, peeked his head back out. Patty stood up. She couldn't accept defeat. Not in front of her coworkers. Not in front of the passengers. Not by her. The handle is putting stress on the metal bars, Patty said. It's too tight. If I have to force it, it doesn't fit. You didn't force it, Beatrice said, bewildered. It slid right in. Look, she wiggled the bag. You're manipulating the test, Patty shouted. That's it. I'm determining this bag is non-compliant. You are refusing to follow crew member instructions. You need to check the bag, or you don't fly. I am not checking a bag containing sensitive medical documents and a laptop because you are having a power trip, Beatrice said, finally dropping the veneer of politeness. Her voice was cold steel. I want to speak to your supervisor. Now. Patty's eyes widened. The request for a manager. The ultimate challenge. I am the supervisor on the floor, Patty smirked. And I am telling you, check the bag or get out of the line. I'm not moving, Beatrice said. She stood next to the sizer, hand on her luggage handle. Call the police if you have to, but I am boarding this plane with my bag. Patty's face went rigid. She marched back to the podium, picked up the phone, and punched a code. Security to gate B14. We have a disruptive passenger refusing to comply with federal safety regulations. She is being aggressive and threatening staff. The crowd gasped. Beatrice hadn't threatened anyone. Leo, the backpacker, shouted, She didn't threaten you. She's just standing there. You're next. Patty pointed a shaking finger at Leo. One more word and you're on the no-fly list too. The terminal fell silent. This was no longer a disagreement. This was a siege. 5 minutes passed. The line for Flight 294 wasn't moving. The tension was thick enough to choke on. Beatrice remained by the sizer, posture perfect, staring straight ahead. She was running through the bylaws of the Federal Aviation Administration in her head. 2 large men in airport security uniforms arrived, flanked by a man in a Vista Airways blazer. The blazer man looked harried, holding a clipboard. This was Rick Stevens, the duty manager. Rick looked like a man who hated his job. He saw the stalled line, the angry passengers, and Patty, who was vibrating with indignation. What's the problem here? Rick asked, walking up to Patty. She's refusing to check a non-compliant bag, Rick, Patty said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial, victimized whisper. She started yelling at me, calling me names. She tried to push past me onto the jet bridge. She's a security threat. Rick looked at Beatrice. He saw a calm, older woman standing next to a bag that clearly fit in the sizer. He looked back at Patty. He knew Patty. He knew she was difficult. But he also knew that the union rules were strict, and backing up his agent was the path of least resistance. If he sided with the passenger, Patty would file a grievance. If he kicked the passenger off, he just had to fill out a form. Rick sighed and walked over to Beatrice. Ma'am, Rick said, his tone bored. I need you to work with us here. We need to get this flight out. Just check the bag. Mr. Stevens, is it? Beatrice read his badge. My bag fits. Your agent is lying. She also just filed a false report to security claiming I was violent. I have roughly 40 witnesses who can attest that I haven't moved from this spot. She was aggressive, Rick, Patty shouted from the podium. She lunged at me. I did no such thing, Beatrice said. Rick rubbed his temples. Look, ma'am. It's the pilot's discretion and the agent's discretion. If she feels unsafe, she feels unsafe. We have a zero-tolerance policy for abuse of staff. I haven't abused anyone, Beatrice said. I am simply trying to board the flight I paid $5,000 for. Money doesn't buy you the right to break the rules, Rick said, reciting a line he'd used 1,000 times. Now, here are your options. Option A. You check the bag, you apologize to Miss Gable for the disruption, and you board. Option B. You don't fly today. Beatrice looked at Rick. She saw the exhaustion in his eyes, but also the cowardice. He wasn't interested in truth. He was interested in on-time departure. You are making a mistake, Beatrice said softly. A very expensive mistake. Is that a threat? Patty shrieked. Rick, did you hear that? She threatened the airline. Rick stiffened. Ma'am, you need to step away from the gate. We are denying you boarding. On what grounds? Interfering with a flight crew member. Section 404, Rick cited vaguely. Step away or the officers will escort you." The security guards stepped forward, hands resting near their belts. They didn't look eager to tackle a grandmother, but they were waiting for the order. Beatrice looked at the plane. She looked at the passengers. Leo was filming on his phone. Several others were too. "You are denying me boarding?" Beatrice clarified. "Officially, yes," Patty said, slamming her hand on the counter. "I'm canceling your ticket right now. You're done." "You're blacklisted," she typed furiously. "Click, click, enter." "Ticket voided," Patty announced triumphantly. "Now, get out of my terminal." Beatrice didn't move toward the exit. Instead, she slowly reached into her tote bag. "Hands where I can see them," one of the security guards barked. "I am getting my identification," Beatrice said slowly. "I think there has been a misunderstanding about who, exactly, is being removed from this terminal." She pulled out a slim, black leather wallet. It wasn't her travel wallet, it was different. On the front, embossed in gold, was the Department of Transportation seal, but simpler. She opened it. Inside wasn't a credit card. It was a hard plastic ID card with a holographic chip and a red stripe across the top. She walked up to the podium, ignoring Rick, ignoring the guards, and walked straight up to Patty. Patty recoiled. "Back up!" Beatrice slammed the ID on the counter. The sound echoed. "Read it," Beatrice commanded. Her voice was no longer that of a passenger. It was the voice of a judge delivering a death sentence. Patty looked down. She squinted. Federal Aviation Administration name. Dr. Beatrice Holloway title. Senior Oversight Auditor. Civil Aviation Board Director. Clearance. Level 5 unrestricted. Below that, in bold red letters, "Do not detain. Do not obstruct. Direct report to Secretary of Transportation." Patty's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Rick, seeing Patty freeze, leaned over to look at the card. His face went white, not pale white, like a sheet of paper. "Oh," Rick whispered. The silence that befell Gate B14 was heavy, physical, and suffocating. It was the kind of silence usually reserved for courtrooms, right after a verdict is read, or operating theaters when the monitor flatlines. Rick Stevens, the duty manager whose boredom had been his defining trait only 30 seconds ago, was now vibrating with a terrified energy. He stared at the card. He read the words Senior Oversight Auditor. He read the words Civil Aviation Board. His brain was trying to catch up with his eyes. In the airline industry, there are passengers, there are elites, and there are VIPs. But above them all, sitting on a throne of red tape and regulatory thunderbolts, are the auditors. These are the people who don't just complain to the manager. They fine the airline $10 million for a safety violation. They are the people who can strip an airline of its operating certificate. They are the people who can ground a fleet. And his gate agent, Patty, had just voided the ticket of one of the highest-ranking ones in the country. "Miss Holloway," Rick stammered, his voice cracking. "Dr. Holloway, I didn't." "You didn't check," Beatrice finished for him, her voice terrifyingly calm. "You assumed, you profiled, and you blindly backed a subordinate who was actively violating Department of Transportation regulations regarding involuntary denied boarding." Patty was still frozen. Her brain hadn't processed the danger yet. She was still stuck on the fact that she had been challenged. "I don't care who she works for, Rick. She was disruptive. She threatened me. That ID could be fake?" Beatrice turned her head slowly to look at Patty. It was the movement of a predator noticing a struggling mouse. "Fake?" Beatrice repeated. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. She tapped the screen 3 times and held it up. On the screen was the Vista Airways internal dashboard. Not the public app, the internal crew access portal. "How do you have that?" Patty gasped. "As of 30 seconds ago, I have administrative override on this terminal's operations," Beatrice said. "I am not just a passenger anymore, Miss Gable. I am now conducting an emergency, Stage 4 compliance audit of this gate, this flight, and this staff." She turned to the 2 security officers who were still hovering uncertainly. "Officers," Beatrice said, her voice snapping like a whip. "You were called here to remove a disruptive individual who was posing a threat to airport security and operations. Is that correct?" The older officer, a man named Sergeant Miller, nodded slowly. "Yes, ma'am. That was the call." "Good," Beatrice said. "Then I suggest you do your job. She pointed a finger, not at the exit, but directly at Patty. "Remove her from the terminal." "What?" Patty shrieked. "You can't be serious." "I work here." "You worked here," Beatrice corrected. "Right now, you are a civilian who has just committed a federal felony by filing a false report to law enforcement regarding an aviation threat. You claimed I lunged at you. The CCTV cameras above us," she pointed to the black dome on the ceiling, "will prove that was a lie. Making a false distress call in an airport is a Class E felony. Officer, detain her for questioning." Sergeant Miller looked at Rick. Rick looked at the floor. "Rick," Patty screamed. "Do something." Rick looked up, sweat dripping down his nose. "Patty, step away from the podium." "You're firing me?" Patty's voice went shrill. "I'm suspending you pending an investigation," Rick said, finding a shred of spine because he knew if he didn't, he would be the one in handcuffs. "Step away from the computer." "Now." "I am not done," Beatrice interjected. She walked around the velvet rope, moving behind the podium. "Ma'am, you can't be back here," Rick said reflexively. "Sit down, Mr. Stevens," Beatrice said without looking at him. She typed a command into the keyboard. Her fingers flew across the keys. She knew the airline's reservation system better than they did. She had helped write the software protocols for the consumer protection updates in 2018. "What are you doing?" Rick asked, horrified. "I am unvoiding my ticket," Beatrice said. "And I am pulling the logs. I want to see how many other tickets Miss Gable has canceled in the last month under the code passenger non-compliance. I have a feeling I'm not the first person she's bullied." The screen populated with a list. Beatrice's eyes narrowed. "Good Lord." "What?" Rick asked, leaning in. 74, Beatrice read. "She has denied boarding to 74 passengers in the last 6 months for behavioral issues. That is statistically impossible for a gate agent unless she is working a prison transport flight." The crowd of passengers, who had been watching this drama unfold with bated breath, started to murmur. Leo, the guy with the backpack, shouted out, "She tried to kick me off last week too, for eating a sandwich in line, and me," an older woman in the back yelled. "She told me my purse was too ugly to be in first class." Beatrice turned to the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, her voice projecting clearly without the microphone. "My name is Dr. Holloway from the Civil Aviation Board. I apologize for this delay. We are going to get you on this plane. But first, we are going to clean house." She turned back to Patty, who was now being effectively boxed in by the 2 security guards. Patty's face was a mask of crumbling plaster. The arrogance was cracking, revealing the terrified bully beneath. "Miss Gable," Beatrice said, "you claimed my bag didn't fit, you claimed I was violent, you claimed I was a security risk. You did this because you enjoyed the power. You liked making people afraid." Beatrice leaned in close, so only Patty could hear. "I have spent 20 years fighting airlines to make sure passengers have rights. I have sat in Senate hearings. I have drafted legislation. I did not do all that work just so a petty tyrant with a badge could ruin a nurse's vacation or a student's trip home. You picked the wrong passenger, sweetie." Patty's lip trembled. Tears began to well up in her eyes, not tears of remorse, but tears of a narcissist who realizes the mirror has broken. "I was just following policy," Patty whispered, her voice shaking. "No," Beatrice said loud enough for the microphone to pick up. "You were using policy as a weapon, and I am disarming you." "Officer," Beatrice nodded to Sergeant Miller. "Please escort Miss Gable to the airport police station. I will be down shortly to file a formal statement regarding her false report. And have the Port Authority preserve the security footage from 6:30 p.m. to 7 p.m. "Yes, Dr. Holloway," Miller said. He turned to Patty. "Let's go, ma'am. Don't make a scene." "This isn't fair," Patty wailed as the officers took her by the elbows. "I have seniority." "Rick, call the union rep." As Patty was dragged away, kicking and screaming like the very toddlers she despised, the terminal erupted into applause. It wasn't polite golf claps. It was a roar of vindication. But Beatrice didn't smile. She wasn't done. She turned her gaze to Rick. "Now, Mr. Stevens," she said, adjusting her glasses. "Let's talk about your lack of oversight. Or should I call your station manager, Brenda Clark, down here to join us?" Rick gulped. "You know Brenda? I had lunch with her last Tuesday." Beatrice lied smoothly. She knew Brenda's name from the org chart she had just pulled up, But Rick didn't know that. Call her. And call the captain. We aren't going anywhere until I sign off on this plane. News travels fast in an airport, but panic travels faster. Within 12 minutes of Patty's removal, the ecosystem of Terminal 4 had shifted entirely. What was once a routine boarding process had turned into a high-level incident command post. Captain Jameson, the pilot of Flight 294, stormed up the jet bridge. He was a man of few words and strict schedules. He had been waiting in the cockpit for 20 minutes, with 0 passengers on board, and he was furious. "Rick, what the hell is going on?" Jameson barked as he exited the jet bridge door. "Why are the passengers still in the terminal? We're going to miss our slot. ATC is going to push us back an hour." "Captain," Rick said, looking like a man facing a firing squad, "we have a situation." "I don't care about the situation. I care about wheels up," Jameson snapped. He looked at Beatrice, who was currently typing on the gate computer. "Who is this? Why is a passenger touching the equipment?" Beatrice finished typing, hit enter, and turned to face the captain. "Captain Jameson," she said. "I am Dr. Beatrice Holloway, FAA Oversight. I have currently placed a hold on your flight manifest due to a gross violation of federal boarding regulations and a security incident involving your ground staff." Jameson paused. The acronym FAA usually had a sobering effect on pilots, but Oversight stopped them cold. "A security incident?" Jameson asked, his tone shifting from angry to professional. "Is the aircraft secure?" "The aircraft is fine," Beatrice said. "The gate was compromised by a rogue agent who was falsifying security threats to remove passengers she didn't like. I've had her removed. However, I need to recertify the manifest to ensure she didn't kick anyone else off this flight illegally before I arrived." Jameson looked at Rick. "Is this true?" "Patty lost it, Cap," Rick admitted, hanging his head. "She tried to bounce the doctor, claimed her bag didn't fit. It clearly fit." Jameson rubbed his face. "Jesus. Patty again? I told operations she was a liability 3 months ago." "Wait," Beatrice said, her ears perking up. "You knew?" Jameson sighed. "She's had complaints. But the union is strong, and management, well, they hate firing people. It's easier to pay off the angry passengers with vouchers." "Not this time," Beatrice said. "Vouchers don't fix civil rights violations." At that moment, the click-clack of high heels announced the arrival of the big guns. Brenda Clark, the station manager for Vista Airways at JFK, came power-walking down the concourse. She was flanked by 2 assistants and looked like she had just run a marathon in a pencil skirt. "Mr. Stevens," Brenda called out, "I just got a call from the operations center in Atlanta. They said someone flagged Flight 294 as under federal audit. What did you do?" Rick just pointed at Beatrice. Brenda stopped. She looked at Beatrice. She looked at the ID card still sitting on the podium. Brenda's face went through a complex series of gymnastics. Confusion, realization, horror, and finally, a plastic customer service mask. "Dr. Holloway," Brenda said, breathless. I had no idea you were flying with us today. If we had known, we would have arranged a VIP escort." "If you had known, your agent probably would have behaved," Beatrice said coldly. "Which is exactly why I fly unannounced. To see how you treat people who aren't on a VIP list. I assure you, this is an isolated incident," Brenda said, using the corporate handbook's favorite phrase. "It is not isolated," Beatrice countered, pointing to the screen. "I have reviewed the logs. Agent Gable has an anomaly rate of 400% regarding denied boardings compared to the airport average. You, Miss Clark, signed off on her performance review last month. You gave her a satisfactory rating." Brenda went pale. I manage 400 agents, Doctor. I rely on the duty managers." "And the duty manager," Beatrice looked at Rick, "stood right there and threatened to have me arrested because he didn't want to deal with the paperwork of overruling her." Beatrice stepped away from the podium. She picked up her bag, the bag that started it all. "Here is what is going to happen," Beatrice announced. She wasn't asking, she was dictating terms. "First, this flight is going to board immediately. No one pays for carry-ons. No one gets checked. If the bins are full, you will gate check them for free and offer a $200 voucher to anyone who volunteers. Is that clear?" "Yes, ma'am," Brenda said instantly. "Second, Beatrice continued. Mr. Stevens here is going to be relieved of duty for the remainder of the shift. He needs to undergo retraining on conflict resolution and the legal definition of compliance. He is not to interact with passengers until that is done. Rick slumped. Yes, doctor. Third, Beatrice said, looking at the crowd of passengers who were hanging on her every word. Every person on this flight is receiving 10,000 frequent flyer miles as compensation for the distress caused by your staff. And Mr. Henderson, she pointed to the businessman, the gold member who had upgraded earlier. He was standing by the window, looking sheepish. Mr. Henderson, who walked past me while I was being berated, Beatrice said, you will be keeping your upgrade. However, I suggest you reflect on why you felt comfortable crossing a line that I was yelled at for standing near. Mr. Henderson nodded, his face beet red. I apologize, ma'am. And finally, Beatrice turned to Brenda. You and I are going to have a meeting on Monday morning at your headquarters. I want the full disciplinary file on Patricia Gable on my desk before I land in Chicago. If I find out she has been terrorizing passengers for years, and you buried it to save on severance pay, I will fine this airline so heavily you'll have to sell the planes to pay for it. Brenda swallowed hard. You'll have the file, doctor. Good. Beatrice smoothed her coat. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a seat in 2A, and my bag fits perfectly. She turned to the gate agent's microphone. She picked it up. Ladies and gentlemen of Flight 294. Beatrice's voice boomed over the speakers, warm and authoritative. We are now ready to board. Thank you for your patience. And please, be kind to one another. She placed the mic down. The passengers cheered. It was a genuine, raucous cheer. Beatrice walked toward the jet bridge. She slid her bag into the sizer one last time, just for show. It glided in. She looked at Rick, who was staring at his shoes. Learn from this, Rick, she said softly. Then she disappeared down the tunnel. While Flight 294 was taxiing to the runway, a very different scene was playing out in the basement of Terminal 4. Patty Gable was sitting in a plastic chair in the airport police holding room. The room was cold, painted a sterile shade of beige, and smelled of stale coffee and disinfectant. She was no longer the tiger of Gate B14. She was a ruin. Her hairspray helmet was disheveled, strands of blonde hair falling into her face. Her mascara was running in black streaks down her cheeks. Sergeant Miller sat across from her, filling out a form on a clipboard. Name? Miller asked. You know my name, Miller. We have coffee every Tuesday, Patty sobbed. For the record, Miss Gable, Miller said, his voice flat. He wasn't her friend right now. He was a cop who had been tricked into almost arresting a federal official. He was pissed. Patricia Ann Gable, she sniffled. Okay. Patricia, you are being charged with filing a false police report and obstruction of federal oversight, Miller said. These are serious charges. We're talking potential jail time, but more likely probation and a massive fine. I didn't mean to, Patty cried. I was just... She was so arrogant. She looked at me like I was nothing. I just wanted to put her in her place. Miller stopped writing. He looked up. Put her in her place? Patty, she's a director at the Civil Aviation Board. Her place is running the industry you work in. I didn't know. That's the point, Miller said. You didn't know. You treated her like garbage because you thought she was a nobody. You thought she was just some old black lady you could bully into submission. If she had been a white guy in a suit, you never would have asked for the sizer. That's not true. I'm not racist, Patty protested, the standard defense of the caught. I didn't say you were racist, Patty, Miller said calmly. I said you profiled her. You saw someone you thought had no power, and you tried to crush them. That's what bullies do. And today, you bullied the wrong person. The door to the holding room opened. A lawyer in a cheap suit walked in. It was the union rep, a tired-looking man named Gary. Gary! Patty jumped up. Thank God. Get me out of here. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. I want to go back to work. Gary didn't open his briefcase. He just looked at her with pity. Patty, sit down, Gary said. What? Call Brenda. Tell her to fix this. I just got off the phone with Brenda, Gary said. And legal at corporate. And? Patty. You're terminated, Gary said gently. Effective immediately. For cause. No, Patty whispered. They can't. I have 20 years. My pension. You committed a felony on company property, Gary explained. It voids the contract. They are cutting you loose. They aren't even going to fight the unemployment denial. They are terrified of Dr. Holloway. They want to show her they took decisive action. But my pension. Patty's voice broke. She was 52. She had nothing else. This job was her whole life. It was the only place she felt powerful. It's gone, Patty, Gary said. You'll get your 401k contributions back, but the company match and the pension benefits? Voided under the gross misconduct clause. Patty slumped back into the chair. The reality hit her like a physical blow. The power she had wielded so carelessly, the power to ruin vacations, to make people cry, to feel important, had evaporated. She had traded her future for the momentary satisfaction of telling a woman her bag was too big. She ruined my life, Patty whispered, staring at the wall. That woman ruined my life. No, Patty, Miller said, standing up to leave. You did this. You loaded the gun, you aimed it, and you pulled the trigger. She just happened to be bulletproof. Miller signaled to the guard outside. Process her. Fingerprints and mugshot. Patty looked at her hands. The manicured nails she used to tap impatiently on the counter were shaking. Please, she whispered. I just want to go home. Yeah, Miller said. So did the 74 people you kicked off flights this year. The door slammed shut, leaving Patty alone with the hum of the fluorescent lights, the same lights she used to rule under, now illuminating her complete and total defeat. The cabin of Flight 294 was quiet, but it was a different kind of quiet than usual. Typically, a Tuesday evening flight to Chicago is filled with the sounds of typing laptops, clinking glassware, and the low murmur of tired business travelers. Tonight, however, the silence was reverent. Dr. Beatrice Holloway sat in seat 2A, sipping a sparkling water with a slice of lime. She had declined the champagne. She needed a clear head. Beside her, the seat remained empty. The flight attendants had subtly ensured that no one sat next to her, giving her a bubble of privacy. But across the aisle in 2D, Mr. Arthur Henderson, the man who had breezed past her at the gate, couldn't seem to settle. He opened his laptop, closed it. He adjusted his seat, then brought it back up. Finally, somewhere over Ohio, he leaned across the aisle. Dr. Holloway, he whispered, his voice tentative. Beatrice didn't look up from her book immediately. She finished the paragraph she was reading, marked the page with a slip of paper, and then turned her head. Yes, Mr. Henderson? I wanted to apologize again, he said. He looked genuinely pained. Back at the gate, I saw her yelling at you. I saw you standing there, and I walked right past. I made a joke about an upgrade. Beatrice studied him. He wasn't a bad man, she decided. He was just a man who had never been forced to notice the friction that others lived with daily. Why did you walk past, Arthur? She asked softly. He paused, thinking, I guess. I assumed you must have done something wrong. Or that it was just a you problem. I figured if I got involved, I'd miss my flight. I just wanted to get home. We all want to get home, Beatrice said. That is the great equalizer of air travel. We are all just trying to get from where we are to where we need to be. But the difference, Arthur, is that when you walk to the gate, you assume the door will open. When I walk to the gate, I have to be prepared for the lock to be changed. She tapped the cover of her book. That woman, Miss Gable. She didn't stop me because of a bag. She stopped me because she needed to feel big. And the easiest way for a small person to feel big is to make someone else feel small. And you let her. I did, Arthur admitted, looking down at his hands. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry, Beatrice said, offering him a small, tired smile. Be observant. Next time you see someone standing still while everyone else is moving, ask yourself who stopped them. And maybe, just maybe, use that gold status voice of yours to say something. Arthur nodded slowly. I will. The rest of the flight passed in peace. But while the air up at 30,000 feet was calm, the ground below was beginning to quake. The viral firestorm. By the time the wheels of the Boeing 737 touched down at O'Hare, the video Leo had recorded was no longer just a video. It was a cultural event. The clip, titled Power Trip Gate Agent Tries to Bully the Wrong Woman, Wait for the ID Drop, had amassed 4.2 million views on TikTok and Twitter in 3 hours. The internet is a cruel and swift judge. The comments section was a bloodbath. Asterisk, the way she switched up when she saw the badge. Oh my God. Asterisk. That agent has been terrorizing JFK for years. She made me cry in 2019. Asterisk, Dr. Beatrice Holloway? I looked her up. She's a legend. She literally wrote the Passenger Bill of Rights. That agent tried to fight the final boss with a stick. Asterisk, fire her. Fire the manager. Fire the whole airline. When Beatrice turned on her phone, it vibrated for a solid 2 minutes. Emails from the Secretary of Transportation. Texts from her daughter. Voicemails from major news networks. She ignored them all. She sent one text to her husband. Landed. It was a day. Home soon. She walked off the plane, her oversized bag rolling smoothly behind her. The flight attendants waved goodbye to her like she was royalty. The pilot stood at the cockpit door and saluted. Beatrice just wanted to sleep. The fallout. Vista Airways headquarters. The following Monday, the meeting at Vista Airways HQ in Atlanta was less of a discussion and more of an execution. The boardroom was filled with the C-suite, the CEO, the COO, the head of legal, and the VP of customer experience. They sat on one side of the mahogany table. Dr. Beatrice Holloway sat on the other. Alone. She placed a thick file on the table. I have reviewed the disciplinary records of Miss Patricia Gable, Beatrice began, her voice echoing in the silent room. And I have reviewed the records of Mr. Rick Stevens. But what concerns me more is the data regarding your compliance bonus structure. The CEO, a man named Sterling, who was currently sweating through his Italian suit, cleared his throat. Dr. Holloway, we have already terminated Miss Gable. We issued a public apology. We are ready to settle. You incentivized it, Beatrice cut him off. I found the memo from 2022. You offer gate agents a $50 bonus for every bag they force a passenger to check at the gate if the flight is over 80% full. You turned safety regulations into a bounty hunting scheme. The room went deadly silent. Miss Gable was a monster of your own making, Beatrice said. She was hunting for bonuses. She saw me, saw a bag that looked expensive, and saw a paycheck. The fact that she enjoyed the cruelty was just a side effect. The root cause is your policy. We were trying to improve on-time departures, the COO stammered. Well, you failed, Beatrice said. Here are my terms. You will abolish the gate check bonus immediately. You will reinstate the 74 passengers, Miss Gable wrongfully banned, with full apologies and compensation. And you will fund a new independent oversight committee, which I will appoint, to audit your gate operations for the next 5 years. That will cost millions, the head of legal protested. Beatrice stood up. She picked up her bag. The fine for a level 4 civil rights violation under the Air Carrier Access Act is $3.2 million per incident, Beatrice noted. I have 74 incidents in this file. Do the math. Or sign the agreement. The CEO looked at the file. He looked at Beatrice. He realized that this woman could single-handedly tank their stock price with one press conference. We'll sign, the CEO whispered. The hard karma. 6 months later. Karma is not always a lightning bolt. Sometimes, it is a slow, grinding rust. For Patricia Gable, the hard karma wasn't jail time. The charges of filing a false police report were eventually dropped down to a misdemeanor in exchange for community service and a permanent ban from working in aviation security. But the real punishment was her life. 6 months after the incident, Patty was working at a large discount retail chain in New Jersey. She was working the returns desk. It was a Saturday, the busiest day of the week. The line was 12 people deep. The fluorescent lights hummed with that same headache-inducing frequency she used to ignore at JFK, but now they seemed to drill into her skull. Next, Patty called out, her voice lacking its old fire. A woman stepped up. She was holding a blender that was clearly used, covered in margarita mix, with no receipt. I want to return this, the customer demanded. It's broken. Ma'am, it's dirty and you don't have a receipt, Patty said, reciting the store policy. I can't take this back. Excuse me? The customer snapped. Do you know how much money I spend here? I want to speak to your manager. Patty felt the familiar surge of anger. She wanted to yell. She wanted to tell this woman to step back. She wanted to call security, but she couldn't. She was on probation at this job. One complaint and she was out. And at 52, with a criminal record and a viral video that made her unemployable in any respectable field, she needed this $14 an hour paycheck to make rent. I can call the manager, Patty said, her voice small. The manager, a 24-year-old kid named Jason, walked over. Just return it, Patty, Jason sighed, not even looking at the blender. Customer satisfaction. Just do it. But it's against policy, Patty whispered. I don't care. Do it. Jason walked away. The customer smirked at Patty. A smug, victorious smirk. See? Was that so hard, sweetie? Sweetie? The word hit Patty like a physical slap. She remembered the day she had used that word on Dr. Holloway. She remembered the feeling of power she had then, and she realized, with a sinking horror, that she was now on the other side of the counter. She was the one with no power. She was the one who had to swallow the abuse. She processed the return in silence, her hands shaking. As the customer walked away, Patty looked up at the security camera in the corner of the ceiling. It stared back, unblinking. She wasn't the watcher anymore. She was the watched. The final victory. Back in Chicago, Dr. Beatrice Holloway was packing for another trip. She was heading to a conference in London. She packed her Tumi carry-on. She placed her laptop, her medical journals, and a fresh stack of passenger rights pamphlets in the front pocket. She drove to O'Hare. She walked to the gate. The gate agent was a young man she didn't recognize. He was dealing with a stressed mother who was struggling to fold a stroller. Take your time, ma'am, the agent said with a smile. We'll get you on board. Let me help you with that tag. Beatrice watched him help the mother. He didn't yell. He didn't cite policy. He just helped. She walked up to the podium. She scanned her boarding pass. Dr. Holloway, the agent said, looking at her name. Welcome back. Seat 2A. Thank you for flying with us. Thank you, Beatrice said warmly. And doctor? The agent added. I saw the video. The training modules changed last month because of you. We focus on compassion over compliance now. Beatrice smiled. It was a genuine, radiant smile. That's good to hear, she said. She walked down the jet bridge, her bag rolling behind her, fitting perfectly into the world she had fought to make just a little bit fairer. And that is the story of how one gate agent's power trip turned into a national lesson in humility. It's a powerful reminder that you never truly know who you are dealing with. Treating people with dignity shouldn't be reserved for those with status. It should be the default for everyone. Patty learned that the hard way, losing her career and her pension because she couldn't see past her own ego. Dr. Holloway proved that true power doesn't need to scream. It just needs to stand its ground. What would you have done if you were in Beatrice's shoes? Would you have kept your cool, or would you have lost it? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story of justice and karma, please hit that like button to help us spread this message. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. We have some incredible real-life dramas coming up next week that you won't want to miss. Thanks for watching, and stay safe out there.